Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. I am 28 years old, and until very recently, I thought I had my life fairly under control. I had been working long hours at my accounting job for years, saving every penny I could, and about a year ago, I finally bought a modest but cozy little house in Columbus, Ohio. It is not a mansion, not even close, but it is mine. I worked for it, I paid for it, and I have been proud to call it home. That sense of pride is what makes everything that happened afterwards so frustrating. To give some background, my parents divorced about a year ago after nearly 3 decades of marriage. It was rough on everyone. My mother, Patricia, is grounded, responsible, and the kind of woman who keeps things stable. My dad, Daniel, has always been reckless with money and decisions. He chases the next exciting thing like a magpie, and it has caused problems before. But he is still my dad, so I have tried to support him despite his flaws. 6 months after the divorce, he remarried. Remarried. He met a woman named Jennifer online. And before anyone could blink, they were married. Jennifer is in her early 40s and has 3 children from a previous relationship: Tyler, who is 17, Madison, who is 13, and Noah, who is 8. It is safe to say this is not some fairy tale blended family situation. When my dad first introduced Jennifer, he spoke as if she was the best thing that ever happened to him. He has always been quick to fall hard, and I honestly did not know what to think. I wanted him to be happy, but something about how fast it all moved did not sit right with me. Still, I told myself it was his life and his choice. Fast forward to this spring. My dad called and said Jennifer's apartment lease was ending and they needed just a few days to sort things out before they moved into a new place. A few days seemed manageable. I love my dad, and I did not want to imagine him on the street, even if it meant tolerating Jennifer and her kids for a short while. I figured it would be inconvenient but temporary. That was my first mistake. Those few days became 3 months, 3 entire months. The very first week I came home from work and found all of them sprawled across my couch like it was theirs, watching Disney Plus and eating snacks. I brushed it off because I thought maybe they were exhausted, but by the second week, things were spiraling. Tyler decided that my office, the one I actually use for my accounting work, was now his gaming room. I found my work chair broken because apparently it was perfect for racing games. I confronted him about it, and he shrugged as if I was overreacting. Not long after that, I realized they had made duplicate keys to my house. I had never given permission for that. Jennifer told me casually over dinner one night, saying, "It's just easier this way. No need to bother you all the time." I sat there in shock. They had literally gone behind my back and copied my keys without asking. The invasion of privacy was mind-blowing. Groceries vanished at lightning speed. I would buy milk on Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning it was gone because Noah poured half the carton over one bowl of cereal. I bought myself a pint of Ben & Jerry's after a particularly rough week, put a sticky note on it saying, "Do not touch," and when I came home, Madison was scraping the bottom of the carton. She just said, "Sorry, I thought you were kidding." The bills doubled. I am not exaggerating. My electric bill, my water bill, even my internet, 5 extra people showering every day, running endless loads of laundry, streaming nonstop, cooking big family dinners with expensive cuts of meat that Jennifer insisted on buying but never paid for. When I asked my dad about helping more with bills, he would hand me $20 here and there and tell me not to stress because it was temporary. Meanwhile, I was watching my savings drain because half a dozen people were freeloading in the house I worked so hard for. Jennifer began making comments that drove me up the wall. She would say things like, "This place is really working out for us," or "It's such a blessing. Your house has so much room." It does not. My guest room became her and my dad's room. My office became Tyler's gaming lair. Madison and Noah camped in the living room with blankets and toys scattered everywhere. I was reduced to hiding in my bedroom like a teenager with strict parents, unable to enjoy my own living room or kitchen without someone being in the way. The final straw came one Friday when I came home from work and found strangers in my house. Jennifer had invited her sister and niece to stay for the weekend without asking me. I walked into my own living room to see a toddler dumping Cheerios all over my rug while cartoons blared at full volume. I demanded to know what was going on, and Jennifer smiled and said, "Oh, They just needed somewhere to crash for a couple of days. You're such a generous person, I knew you wouldn't mind. That was the moment something in me snapped. That night, I sat my dad down and told him flat out that this had gone way too far. I reminded him that this was supposed to be a couple of days, not months. I told him that I am not their landlord, their maid, or their bank. He tried to guilt trip me, saying, "But sweetheart, family helps family. Don't you love me?" I told him that of course I love him, but loving him does not mean paying to raise 3 children that are not mine in a house that is not his. The next morning, while they were still asleep, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. I woke them up and told them they had 2 hours to pack up and leave. I told my dad I loved him, but that this situation was over. Jennifer called me ungrateful and selfish. Tyler sulked about losing his gaming room, Madison muttered that I was psycho, and Noah cried because I would not let him take my Nintendo Switch. I held firm. They packed up and left that afternoon in my dad's car, sulking as if I had evicted them from a palace instead of reclaiming my own home. My mom later told me I should not be surprised because my dad has always leaned on me whenever he finds himself in trouble. And now, here I am, finally sitting in silence in my own home, questioning if I went too far. So, AITA for kicking my dad, stepmom, and her kids out of my house after they decided to live here for 3 months without my permission and even made duplicate keys. Well, it turns out throwing my dad, Jennifer, and her kids out of my house was only the beginning of the drama. I thought once I got my space back, I could finally breathe and move forward. For a few blissful days, that was true. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, aired out every room, and sat in silence with a glass of wine, feeling like I had reclaimed a part of myself that had been taken hostage. But then the fallout started, and it has been a roller coaster. My dad has not spoken to me since the day I told him to leave. He went completely silent. Normally, when we had arguments in the past, he would at least call after a few days to smooth things over or make some half-hearted apology. This time, nothing. No text, no call, not even a passive-aggressive emoji. Just a void. It stung because despite all his flaws, he is still my father, and I never imagined that drawing a boundary in my own home would make him cut me off. Jennifer, however, did not stay quiet. She took her grievances to Facebook for the whole world to see. She posted a long, dramatic rant about how I had abandoned family in their time of need, complete with sad emojis and a story that made her sound like the saint of blended motherhood who had been cruelly cast out by a heartless daughter. She even tagged me in the post. I was mortified. There I was, scrolling on my lunch break, and suddenly I was confronted with this public shaming. The comments section was full of her friends telling her how strong she was, how unfair it was, how she deserved better, how I must have no compassion. I could feel my blood pressure climbing as I read people who did not even know me calling me selfish and spoiled. Worse, family members saw it. My aunt called me not long after, saying she had seen Jennifer's post and asking how I could turn my back on my own father. She said things like family should stick together no matter what and that I should be ashamed of myself. I tried to explain that this was not about refusing to help for a few days, but about 3 months of chaos, disrespect, and financial strain. She brushed it off and said I should have been more patient because my dad was just trying to build a new life. That conversation left me shaking with frustration. It felt like no one cared about how much I had been pushed to the breaking point. Meanwhile, my coworkers noticed I was distracted and asked if everything was okay. I did not go into details, but I admitted I was having family problems. One of them said I looked lighter and happier after whatever decision I had made, which reassured me that I was not imagining the relief I felt after they left. For the first time in months, I could actually work without wondering who was in my house or what bill was about to skyrocket. The cherry on top was when a neighbor stopped me while I was out getting the mail and asked if everything was all right. Apparently, my house had been a revolving door of teenagers, kids, and random relatives during those 3 months, and people in the neighborhood had started to notice. She said in a concerned voice that it looked like I had half a dormitory living with me. I had to laugh a little, even though it was embarrassing, because it confirmed that I had not been imagining how chaotic it had become. Through all of this, my mom has been my anchor. She called after hearing what happened and said she was proud of me for finally drawing a line. She knows better than anyone how much my dad tends to bulldoze over boundaries, and she reminded me that it is not my job to rescue him from the consequences of his choices. When I told her about Jennifer's Facebook post, she just snorted and said that people who live off others will always find a way to make themselves the victims. It made me laugh because it was so blunt, but so true. The funniest part came later that evening when she texted me a meme of a raccoon being kicked out of a trash can with the caption, "Bye, freeloaders." I laughed until I cried. After the Facebook fiasco, the phone calls from relatives, and the endless waves of guilt tripping, I figured the worst of it was behind me. I thought that with my dad and Jennifer gone, my house would finally be a sanctuary again and that they would sort out their own problems. I had reclaimed my home, my peace, and my sanity. I was wrong. A few days after I changed the locks, word trickled back to me that my dad, Jennifer, and her kids were staying in a cheap motel across town. A cousin mentioned it in passing, clearly fishing for me to show some sympathy, as if this little tidbit would melt my cold heart and make me rush to their aid. I did feel a twinge of sadness, but not because I doubted my decision. It was sadness that my dad had put himself in this situation, sadness that instead of being the parent who supported his daughter, he had become the one draining me dry and dragging me into chaos. The motel thing did not stay a rumor for long because my dad eventually texted me himself. After weeks of silence, his first contact with me was not an apology, not an acknowledgement of what he had put me through, but a request for money. He wrote that they were staying in a motel until they could get back on their feet and asked if I could help out just a little with the cost. Reading that message, I felt a rush of emotions, anger, disappointment, and even a touch of disbelief. This was the same man who had guilt-tripped me for setting boundaries in my own home, the same man who watched me drowning under doubled utility bills while contributing next to nothing. And now he wanted me to subsidize his motel stay. For a moment, I just stared at my phone, torn between wanting to scream and wanting to laugh. I thought about the 3 months of noise, broken furniture, vanishing groceries, sky-high bills, and complete disrespect for my privacy. I thought about Jennifer casually telling me they had made duplicate keys like it was no big deal, and about her sister and niece invading my living room without asking. I thought about my dad dismissing my concerns with that infuriating "don't stress yourself" tone, while I silently calculated how much debt I could risk if this dragged on. Then I thought about how good it had felt to finally lock my doors, sit in peace, and breathe in the silence of my own house again. I texted back a simple, "No, just no, no explanations, no compromises, no bargaining." He had crossed every boundary, taken advantage of my generosity, and now that I had taken my house back, I was not going to hand him money to continue avoiding responsibility. His response came quickly. He wrote, "You've changed." Those 2 words hit harder than I expected. It was not just a manipulative jab. It was a reflection of how he truly saw me. To him, my change was not growth or maturity or the ability to finally say enough. To him, my change was betrayal. It was refusing to enable him any longer. For a split second, I felt guilty. The little girl in me, who had always wanted her father's approval, squirmed at the thought of disappointing him. But then, the adult in me remembered that this was not about love or loyalty. This was about respect and boundaries. So I texted him back, "You haven't." Those 2 words said everything I needed them to. He had not changed at all. He was still reckless, still chasing the next shiny thing without thinking about consequences, still leaning on me to clean up the mess when it all fell apart. I hit send or set the phone down and sat in silence for a long while, knowing that conversation might have just solidified the distance between us for good. I replied, "You haven't." The motel chapter did not last long, and honestly, I am not surprised. Word travels fast in my family, and through a mixture of gossip and my dad's own sporadic updates, I eventually pieced together what happened next. Apparently, Jennifer and my dad split up, shocking to absolutely no one but him. From what I gathered, things fell apart quickly once the motel stay stretched on. Jennifer was never exactly the type to stick around when things got tough, and without my house to lean on and bankroll their lifestyle, the cracks in their whirlwind relationship started showing fast. She took her 3 kids and moved back in with her sister permanently. I do not know if it was mutual or if she just walked out, but either way, it ended. When I first heard about it, I had conflicting feelings. On one hand, I felt a grim sense of vindication. This was the outcome I had seen coming from a mile away. My dad leapt headfirst into a relationship with a woman he barely knew, uprooted his life, and in the process dragged me into chaos. On the other hand, I could not help but feel a little sad. Divorce after 30 years, a rushed remarriage, and then another implosion all within a year. It was messy and painful, even if it was of his own making. Then came the phone call. My dad reached out for the first time since our last heated exchange, his tone much different this time. Instead of guilt-tripping or demanding, he sounded worn down and almost humbled. He said he regretted how things went down between us and that he wanted to rebuild our relationship. For the first time in a long while, I heard a sliver of sincerity in his voice. It was not wrapped in manipulation or excuses, just a kind of tired acknowledgement that he had messed up. I sat there, listening, trying to process. For so long, my interactions with him had revolved around me being the responsible one and him taking advantage of it. It had been exhausting, and it had chipped away at the closeness I used to feel with him. Now here he was, alone, and admitting he wanted things to be better. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to fall back into that familiar father-daughter bond. But the wiser part of me knew that rebuilding meant setting ground rules. I told him I was open to that, but not if it meant being his emergency housing plan ever again. Life now feels like the calm after a storm, and honestly, it is the kind of calm I did not realize how badly I needed. After months of chaos, noise, constant tension, and the feeling that my own home was slipping out of my hands, things are finally quiet again. The silence in the mornings, the ability to make coffee without someone else's mess on the counter, the simple fact that I can come home from work and know that everything will be exactly how I left it, it is peace in its purest form. With that peace came something I had been dreaming about for years, but never had the right circumstances for: adopting a dog. During those months when my house was crowded with 5 extra people, I could barely keep myself afloat, let alone care for a pet. But once they were gone, and once I had space again, both physically and emotionally, I went to a local rescue shelter and found the sweetest mutt. She is a medium-sized black and brown dog with big ears and the kind of soulful eyes that melt your heart. I named her Daisy. From the moment she walked into my house, tail wagging, it felt like I was reclaiming not only my home, but also my ability to choose what kind of life I want to live. Daisy has been my shadow ever since, following me from room to room, curling up on the couch next to me, and making me laugh when she chases her own tail. She represents freedom and comfort in a way I did not expect. As for my dad, things have shifted in a way I honestly did not think possible. After Jennifer left and he had to face the fallout of his impulsive decisions, he became quieter, more reflective. He is living in a small apartment now, not far from my mom's side of town, and for the first time, he seems to have accepted responsibility for how he handled things. He admitted to me that he rushed into things with Jennifer, that he let his excitement blind him to reality, and that in the process, he failed to respect my boundaries. Hearing him say that was surreal. My dad is not the type to easily admit fault, so when he did, it felt like something shifted. Our relationship is still being rebuilt slowly, but this time it feels healthier. I no longer feel like I am the default safety net, waiting to catch him when his latest decision falls apart. I am open to spending time with him, having dinner, even going on walks with Daisy together, but I made it clear that I will never again be the emergency housing plan. To his credit, he actually seems to have heard me this time. He has been making do on his own, and while I can tell it has humbled him, I think it has also been good for him. Looking back, I do not regret standing up for myself. At the time, it felt terrifying to go against him, to risk damaging the relationship by setting such a firm boundary. But now, with distance and perspective, I can see it was the only way forward. If I had let things continue, I would have resented him more and more, and our bond would have deteriorated beyond repair. Drawing that line was painful, but it forced both of us to grow. I wanted to help my dad, and in a way, I did, just not in the way he thought. I refused to enable him, and that pushed him to finally face his own choices. It was not easy, and it certainly was not pretty, but it was necessary. I did not sign up to run a halfway house for half a year. I signed up to live my life, take care of myself, and enjoy the home I worked so hard for. Now, with Daisy snoring softly next to me on the couch, I can finally do that. So, Ada, if you enjoyed following along with this saga, please give it a like, leave a comment, and consider subscribing for more stories.